All right, we're going to read another chapter. We're on chapter 17, Revival of the Unknown Tongue. They're going to pick up their private language, I bet. Okay, here we go. There were a great many changes taking place, and very few of these changes were engineered by Elvis. I was being crowded aside by several newcomers to Elvis's immediate company, but I don't think Elvis noticed that my place by his side was being stolen by degrees. I was still making $250 a week, and Elvis was still paying all my expenses, but there were now a number of others who had joined the provisional group Elvis had developed to provide moral support, physical safety, and fellowship, primarily people who had become associated with Elvis while he was in the Army and who stayed with him after he had been honorably discharged. I didn't feel at ease with Elvis's new Army acquaintances, who were always swapping Army stories. It might have been different if my older brother, Carroll Jr., had been in full possession of all his faculties, especially since I felt like I was with a lot of military personnel. Carroll Jr., who had served in the Army during the Korean War, could have filled me in on the Army lingo, among other things, if his having been shell-shocked had not taken its toll. He didn't have all his faculties. He drank a lot, too. Elvis just giving him a job out of being a family member, taking care of his family. Others who were in and out, coming and going, were too numerous to mention, but some of the more important persons were Bitsy Mott, top aide for the colonel, who was also his brother-in-law, Patsy Presley, Uncle Vester and Aunt Cletus's daughter, Louise Harris, George Klein, who had traveled with us during the 50s, who also went to high school with Elvis, Jimmy Kingsley, judo and karate instructor, because Elvis had picked up karate while he was in Germany, and Richard Davis, most of whom would quit and come back or get fired and come back in a kind of now you see him, now you don't scenario. Trust was the key word. There we go. Trust was the key word to the persons gathered with Elvis, and each one tried to make himself or herself trustworthy. But Elvis had never been one to trust another person all that easily, and since his release from the military, he seemed to be even more distrustful and watchful of everyone. I was working 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, day and night, as I had worked in the 50s. Elvis paid for 12 Triumph motorcycles, one for everybody there, so that we could go with him on midnight rides like we did in the 50s. His group's bigger, so he had to buy 12. I don't know who in the media came up with the term El's Angels, but it stuck, or was bandied about, although not by any of us, because we didn't break any laws or set out to break any laws. There's a picture right there. Yours truly, still one of El's Angels with his Triumph. Trust. And he trusted Priscilla. He should not have. I worked at making travel arrangements as we would be driving out Route 66 from Memphis to California, and I had to keep the cars ready, replacing worn tires, checking generators, fan belts, spark plugs, batteries, and so forth for all of Elvis's Cadillacs, Lincolns, limos, buses, vans, and mobile home units, because he had that mobile home unit he would drive to California. So that's what he did. He worked on all the vehicles. But most of the time, we were just trying to come up with ways to have fun, as we were more or less restricted to Graceland, not being able to go out during the daylight hours. Being cooped up for long periods of time caused Elvis to get uptight. And when we saw him fidgeting from cabin fever, one of us would walk over and throw a punch at him, and he would throw a karate kick at the ribs of whoever had thrown the punch. and a general roughhouse would be underway until we remembered where we were and managed to calm down. But this doesn't mean we were all a bunch of belligerent brutes, because at Graceland there was not a lot of swearing or ill use of the English language, such as vulgarities, certainly not in the presence of guests, and we behaved like gentlemen, or better yet, as if we were all Elvis's kinfolk. On March 21st, 1960, Elvis and I and all got on a train. Elvis said airplanes were off limits, bound for Miami, where Elvis was scheduled to videotape the Frank Sinatra show at the Fontainebleau Hotel. All along the way, Elvis's fans were lined up along the tracks. Thanks to the Colonel advertising his schedule, Frank Sinatra's show was the third and last show sponsored by Timex. Sponsored by Timex. Elvis was paid $125,000 for the few minutes he would be on the show. Sammy Davis Jr., Joey Bishop, Peter Lawford, and Dean Martin were there too. The Colonel had seen to it that a huge percentage of the members of Elvis's fan clubs were there. That's nice. The critics were predictably kind to Sinatra and unkind to Elvis, referring to Elvis's entourage as the awkward squad. But the music fans in the audience favored Elvis and screamed excitedly when he sang Frank Sinatra's hit, Witchcraft. Sinatra only received polite applause when he sang Elvis's hit, Love Me Tender. So, if there was a scheme afoot to upstage Elvis or topple him from the top spot in the hearts of his fans, it flopped. And of course, with Elvis, it was nothing personal, just business. Having bolstered Frank Sinatra's declining TV ratings, Elvis headed to Nashville for another recording session at RCA using the code name Civil Yelserp, which was Elvis's name spelled backwards, when he called Chet Atkins. Where Elvis, and this is where he recorded the album Elvis Is Back. Civil Yelserp. Elvis Presley. Civil Yelserp. That was his name spelled backwards. The Colonel started asking $150,000 for each appearance by Elvis, and he put a stop to Elvis's free appearances. The Colonel believed that a star could burn out from overexposure, among other things. All right, that was a very short chapter, but this is a long one, so I'm going to hold off, and it's just going to be a short 8-minute chapter of him coming back. I just don't like it. I don't like things coming back and things are changing. But none of it was stuff that Elvis was instigating. None of the changes. His favorite gene was being crowded out by the newcomers that came over from Germany. Maybe he didn't realize it. And he didn't feel at ease with these other people. Elvis is starting to make his group of people, as he wanted to trust. He needed people around him he could trust. So Richard Davis is a new guy here. So more than Uncle Vester became a gate guard. Bitsy Mott worked for the Colonel. Patsy Presley worked in the office with Vernon. Uncle Vester was at the gate. I don't know who Lewis Harris is. George Klein was a DJ friend of Elvis's who sometimes traveled with him, sometimes didn't, because he was a DJ and he was working pretty regularly, but he was a classmate with Elvis. I don't know who Jimmy Kingsley is. Judo and karate instructor. And Richard Davis was a new guy, but he ended up being with him for a long time. Elvis Elvis had never been one to trust another person all that easily, and since his release from the military, he seemed to be even more distrustful and watchful of everyone, starting to feel a little, like he would tell people, I never knew if they liked me because of me or because I was Elvis Presley. So he just couldn't quite trust them when he came back. Did not like being cooped up. He would get fidgety from cabin fever. They go down to Miami, and then he goes back to Nashville to do a recording, and recorded the album Elvis is Back. Had some great songs on that. All right, I'm going to stop here, and we'll pick up again another time. All right, thank you.